what's impressive to me is, so I've been a naturopath for 30 years, and naturopaths have always talked about your health begins in your gut. Hi, Jean. Come on in. Have a seat. That's been like our mantra for years. It's always been part of the philosophy of naturopathic medicine, because we strive to treat the underlying cause. We don't just want to make symptoms go away or give a drug to hide or cover things up. We want to heal literally from the inside out and repair and regenerate. So when I first looked at these products, and I thought, well, this is pretty simple, but thorough. And the more I thought about it, the little light bulb sometimes goes off slowly. I said, this is actually brilliant, because it's simple, because it's all of the ingredients in Janelle's product have been used for years and years and years, but she's put it together in this very easy to use, very user-friendly process that you can still live a hectic lifestyle and succeed in repairing your gut. So
I have had back pain my whole life, and about 5 years ago, got to the point where I was in bed, literally, for about a year and a half. And I started seeing a doctor up in Bend, and he was doing alternative medicines. First they start with cortisone, and then, they're like, well, this isn't working. They did a nerve ablation. I spent, on my insurance records, or some information I got recently, in 3 years I went into that doctor 33 times. And of those appointments, about 4 of them were covered by insurance because we were doing alternative medicine. So my injections were costing $650 a treatment to $200 a treatment. So we spent thousands and thousands and thousands of dollars, and they could never tell me what was wrong with my back, and it never really got better. It just kind of slightly changed. And so when my mom told me about this, I'm like, oh, I'll try it. So she had lost like 6 inches off of her belly in 2 days because she had this bloat. Like, she felt like she was pregnant all the time, and she'd done many weight loss programs, including one in Bend that was affiliated with a nurse, and she's seen her for 2 years, and went to this nurse for 2 years and couldn't get below this certain weight. And so in less than 3 weeks, she looks fabulous. And I have pictures I can show you guys if you haven't seen my Facebook page. It's pretty amazing, and she says she feels great. So I started the program. First week, I'm thinking, oh, my back kind of feels good, but I kind of have days like that. By the second week, my back pain was gone, and I was shocked. And I'd lost 11 pounds. And I'm like, this is pretty impressive. And I wasn't hungry. I wasn't like craving. Now, I do feel like I need that drink in the morning. So Saturday, I decided to get a Rockstar. So I grabbed a Rockstar, and I took a drink of it, and it just tasted nasty. But I continued to drink it. Well, within probably 15, 20 minutes, I had the worst headache. And then the next day, I really felt like I was getting the flu. My body just hurt. And I called Janelle, and she's like, So I took a little extra Exodus. And so Monday, I get up this morning. I think I'm feeling pretty good. I got to work with Carol. I'm thinking, I'll just try a Rebel, because, they're different than the Rockstars, right? So I take about 3 sips of that, looked at Carol, and said, I have a headache. I don't feel good. And so I'm kind of hard.
And I took the cup.
Yeah, she did. I almost cried. It was very sad. I was like, I could just have another sip. So for me, I know that it truly has, in just a short amount of time, changed my system, and including my back. I mean, thousands of dollars, multiple visits. I missed a lot of my kids' games during high school because I couldn't stay at the games because my back pain was too bad. So take a little silent note of what your aches and pains are now before you start, because it truly is life-changing.
Yeah. Thank you so much. I want to just start out. Could I ask everyone to please give a round of applause to our beautiful Carol Petherbridge and Teresa Skinner for making this happen tonight. Thank you so much. Also, can I have you also give it up for this beautiful facility that we can meet in? I'm so glad that we're not trying to cram into someone's living room, which might be the alternative. So let's give a round of applause for Sarah. And finally, I'd like all of you to give yourselves a round of applause, because you are some pretty smart people to come out tonight to get this information. It's going to be life-changing for you, and someone you know and love, including yourself, is going to be greatly benefited from the information that you get here. So a big round of applause for all of you. Thank you. Ralph Waldo Emerson said, Our lives are an apprenticeship to the truth, and I'm here tonight to teach you some truth that I have learned, both by great discomfort and pain, some discouragement and despair even. And then once I got around the other end of this truth, there's a whole lot of joy once you get on the other end of a true principle. And so I promise you that I guarantee you it's going to be an hour well spent. I want to begin by asking you to manage your communication devices if you haven't turned off your cell phone.
Oh, thank you.
You might have heard my cell phone going off here when Carol was talking. Go ahead and turn those off now if you haven't. The other communication device is this communication device. And so I'd like to invite you to write down your questions as we go. Your questions are important, and if you don't hear an answer to that question during the presentation, we will have 10 to 15 minutes at the end for you to ask your questions. All right? Does that sound good? If your question is not answered during that 10 or 15 minutes at the end, and you'd like to have some time to talk with me about your health history or some other health issues affecting your family, and there's just not time for it tonight, there are consultations available on my website, and that's listed in your class notes. Raise your hand if you've got class notes right now. We should have enough to go around. Excellent. All right, so I want your attention to be up here as much as possible. All the important stuff and what you see up here on the projector are in your class notes, so you don't need to write any of that down. All right, here we go. In the next 45 minutes, you're going to learn how your pain and inflammation and broken brain states like depression, anxiety, memory loss, and attention deficit are all linked with the gut. You'll learn how to recognize this missing diagnosis I'm going to tell you about and how to heal it, all in 45 minutes. Does that sound like a great deal? Okay, just give me a thumbs up if you're down with that. That sounds like a good arrangement. All right. I want to start out by talking about a medical mystery. I love connections, and I have noticed this connection in the last few years of a modern medical mystery that we're experiencing and a proverb from ancient history. I think that sounds like some kind of book. There might be a book in my future about that. Let's take a look. Today, in the year 2016, Americans are more pained and inflamed and broken brain than we have ever been before. Here's some statistics. You don't need to read all of them, but notice out to the right, you can see the organization that's responsible for the data that I'm reporting. Let's just skim through it really quick. There are 325 million of us Americans today, and of that many, 85 million have inflammation in our circulatory system, some form of heart disease. Approximately 350 million people worldwide have arthritis. 40 million are Americans, and 250,000 of those are children. So rheumatoid conditions are climbing. IBS affects 45 million in the U.S., and most of those are female. And tonight we're going to learn why that condition happens more to females than it does for men. 25 million children and adults have an inflamed pancreas, and the projections are that any child that is 15 years of age and younger, there will be 1 in 3 for that age group, and anyone being born after that time. So the numbers are climbing. 1 in 4 people worldwide have some broken brain condition. That's from the World Health Organization. 1 in 5 Americans have an autoimmune disease. I think it's really interesting that just 6 years ago, it was 1 in 20 Americans had an autoimmune disease. Now we're to 1 in 5 in just that 6-year period. And the last statistic that is a mystery is, in the last decade, we've had a 50% increase of ER visits in the U.S. for food allergy-related emergency. Now, in Europe, this is considered epidemic. In Europe, they've had a 700% increase in the last 10 years. And if you'd like to follow up on that, you can check out the Centers for Disease Control. They have no explanation for this epidemic. And tonight, you're going to learn one. All these inflammatory states are a living nightmare that doesn't have to happen for you or me because of the information that you're going to get tonight. It depends really on how soon we're willing to wake up to some truth affecting everyone's health. Let's go back for just a minute to a proverb from ancient history. Now, Carol mentioned, she referred to the naturopathic field embraces the idea that all disease begins in the gut. And the person who spoke that first and recorded it was Hippocrates. He is the father of modern medicine. And back in 600 AD, he recorded that in Italian or Latin, that all disease begins in the gut. But actually, if you take a look too at Judeo-Christian literature, back in Holy Writ, there is a proverb that speaks about this interesting mystery, and it is this. There are 3 phrases in this proverb, back from Proverbs in the Old Testament, and then through the New Testament too. It's really cool to see this connection. And this is the proverb: health in the navel, marrow in the bones. And the third piece is strength or fertility. Okay, now I'd like you to come fast forward with me about 2,000 years to the year 1980. And there are a group of ear, nose, and throat specialists led by Orion Truss, MD. And they are otolaryngologists. They test for food allergies. These are their first allergists. And they find it really curious that as they run these food allergy assays for people, that there's a high incidence of allergy to mold and fungus right along with allergy to the environment, to pollens, to foods, to pet danders, and the like. So they think that's kind of curious and begin to form this hypothesis that perhaps somehow this mold and fungus plays a part in the mechanism of creating food allergies. Now tell me, raise a hand if you'd be interested in learning how an allergy is born. Am I going too deep on that? Are you here tonight to hear about that? Yeah. Okay, raise one hand if you're interested. Actually, give me 2 hands because it's going to take 2 hands for this little object lesson. All right, bring your hands out in front of you. I'd like you to interlace your fingers so that there is no light coming through between those fingers. Can you do that for me? This, my friends, is a healthy bowel. And in order for anything, let's say this is the bowel side, this is where I eat food, it comes along the side, and on the back is the bloodstream, all right? So this is a healthy bowel, and in order for anything to move from the gut into the bloodstream, it's got to be broken down into teeny tiny particles, individual building blocks, vitamins and minerals, essential fatty acids, right? So in a bowel like this, there's no way protein chains will slip through into the bloodstream. They can't. They have to be broken down into their tiny building blocks. All right, now go ahead and loosen the weave, everybody, on your little diagram out here. Loosen the weave so you see lots of space between it. This, my friends, is a leaky gut. And what happens now is whatever I'm eating regularly runs past this leaky portion in the bowel, and chunks of partially digested food now slip into the bloodstream undigested. So let's say this might be a corn molecule. It might be wheat protein, which is gluten. Gluten is actually just 2 amino acids still connected together. Gliadine, glutenin equals gluten. And so if that slips into the bloodstream through this patchy fabric here, then what happens is the immune system sees protein coming through. And what the immune system thinks is happening is that we have an invader. Parasites are composed of protein, aren't they? Small animals and organisms, they're made of protein. And so the immune system pulls the alarm, the 5-alarm bell. We have an emergency. We're being breached. The bowel is being breached by an invader. And so what the immune system does then to help our body is flood the site with histamine. Now, histamine is responsible for swelling things. So we're trying to swell the opening shut so no more of that invader can come through, right? So this might be the gut quality you feel after you eat really cheesy pizza. Or if you've had bread all weekend long, you've just eaten mostly bread. And you just feel that cramping and that owie. That's the body is actually attacking itself from the bloodstream side. So what if we could remove the cause of what made the gut look like this? And then what if we could restore the bowel to look like this? And then to top it off, what if we re-implant a really healthy population of friendly flora? Then now the foods that I'm eating, foods that formerly caused me all this trouble, now these foods can once again be tolerated without all the inflammation, without the dis-ease and discomfort. Would that be fantastic? Would you be game to learn about something like that? Yeah. So that's the idea we're going to talk about. So back to the proverb then. Health in the navel. If we can restore health to the navel, then the second phrase was marrow in the bones, right? Well, our bone marrow happens to be the place that our immune systems are born. Stem cell transplants are all about creating new bone marrow for us, right? So not only is our immune system born when we're a child, but our immune system continues to be maintained out of the bone marrow. So when we have messed up bone marrow, then we do not have strength. And in fact, fertility also begins to be affected, just like this ancient proverb. So that's this model I'm going to share with you tonight. This protocol is, let's restore health to the navel. Now the immune system stops attacking the body. Autoimmune disease melts away. And strength and fertility returns. So It's pretty awesome. It's a pretty awesome protocol, and it's exciting. But anything really awesome about it goes to the one who created our bodies. All the credit goes there, and all these tools I'm going to share with you too come from Mother Earth, and so all the credit goes there. I just happen to be in the right place at the right time to get this information. And if anything I have to share with you is helpful to you, then it's worth the long drive, it's worth all the effort, it's worth all the pain that I went through if I can help relieve that kind of suffering for someone else. So I really believe this is a part of my mission in life right now. 20 years ago, my life changed dramatically. I had this history of declining health that got a little bit worse and a little bit worse, and finally just blew up after my fourth baby. My daily companions were low-grade to migraine headaches. I had increasing sensitivities to foods and to the makeup I'd been using, to stuff in the environment. My watch gave me a rash. My earrings started causing my ears to swell. My Arbonne lotions and moisturizer made my face blow up in rashes, a big, thick, leathery rash. And I thought, this wasn't a problem before. I've been using this stuff for 7 years. So I'd go off of it, and then it would all clear up, and I'd come back to it 3 weeks later. Sure enough, it gave me a rash again. I'm like, am I going crazy? Or is my body really falling apart? And it was, in fact, falling apart. So although each doctor I went to said your symptoms are atypical, we have some prescriptions for you, some muscle relaxants. One medical doctor said what you really need is kind of a focus group to talk about your problems, but I really can't see anything on these tests that say that you have any kind of a disease. However, I did collect more and more symptoms. I collected a whole bunch of labels, the first one being colitis, then spastic colon, irritable bowel syndrome, then chronic fatigue immune deficiency syndrome, and finally fibromyalgia. So at this point, I just had baby number 4. I was sleeping 3 hours a day. I had continual abdominal complaints, and I just begged God to tell me what on earth good could come from this condition and just give me some resources to get well. And things began to change within the next couple of weeks. I stopped asking to be healed. I'm like, okay, you know what's up. If you'll show me what to do, I will do it. I don't care how hard it is. And that's when I guess I was teachable. So I began to find things that, it was really wonderful how our healing journeys go. Like when the student's ready, the teacher appears. And people appeared in my life who had experiences just ahead of me that could kind of point out some of the signs and the curves coming up ahead. So I began my journey. It took me 2 years to heal from fibromyalgia. Then at that point, all the foods that had formerly been a problem for me were no longer a problem. I was able to have corn and wheat and soy and gluten and dairy products and feel great. I still have kind of a love-hate relationship with sugar. I keep that really moderate. I believe in eating as much sugar as you can eat and still feel fabulous. So that's kind of my condition. But on this program, you will be able to have sugar again, just not while you're on the therapy. It is a therapy and not an entire way of life. The whole idea here is to get us back onto these beautiful foods God made for the benefit and use of man. All right, so like I say, I had 4 children at this point. I knew I wanted more kids. They were so darling, but I was in way over my head. So once I healed, though, what was really great is I had the opportunity to have more children. I had 5 more babies in a brand new body. And pregnancy was joyous. Their infancy was so much more fun. No more ear infections and respiratory infections and all the pregnancy complaints that I had. No more throwing up into the 3rd trimester like I had before. All this was connected with having a very unhealthy gut. So hooray for families and hooray for children. Let's give it up for babies and healthy moms. So as I began my search, I found this fascinating information about leaky gut syndrome and its connection to all of these autoimmune conditions. Take a look right here and tell me, just by a raise of hands, if you have a close friend or family member that has 1 or more of these conditions, raise your hand. Okay, in fact, raise 2 hands if you've got more than 1 up on the board. Okay, that's pretty, hands and feet. That's pretty pervasive. What has some medical circles spinning about this information concerning leaky gut is that prior to this model being formed, doctors had nothing to do for people with autoimmune conditions except to try to medicate the symptoms individually and ease human suffering. That was really all that they could do. and then just say, we don't have a cure for this. True story, there is a cure for everything. I believe this deep in my soul. We just may not understand what the cure is right now. But we do have a cure for autoimmune conditions now. There's something we can do to take our power back and to take control of our own health. And that's the most exciting information of all. Okay, so how does it happen? Let's talk for just a minute about the primary cause of leaky gut is Candida yeast. Now, yeast lives in every single body that's born on the earth, really healthy bodies and really sick bodies. The difference is when the yeast grows out of control, grows unchecked, then we begin to have problems. So I'd like you just to think for a minute about your body is composed primarily of connective tissue. Yes, we have a skeleton and we're composed of water, but everything else falls in the category of connective tissue. And the vast majority of the connective tissue that makes up you is semi-permeable membrane. So this is membrane that's designed to let some things come through and keep other things out. So I'd like to just review for a minute all the areas of your body that are composed of mucous membrane. We can start with the gastrointestinal tract. This is the largest organ in the body, and it's entirely covered with semi-permeable mucous membrane. Then any other membrane that has, any other body cavity that has contact with the outside world is also covered with this semi-permeable membrane. So we have the ear, nose, and throat, that's the upper respiratory. We have the lower respiratory, the lungs, the whole GI tract, the reproductive system, the urinary tract. The skin is actually also a semi-permeable membrane. Did you know that? We breathe through our skin. And when the skin gets infected, what happens? You have pus. It's mucus that also forms there around infection. So just think for a minute of all of the pain and discomfort you could create in a body by just inflaming one or more of those semi-permeable membranes. We have different names for all of them. In the urinary tract, it's cystitis, but it's just an inflamed permeable membrane. In the GI tract, it's IBS, but it's the same thing. So the other thing is these semi-permeable membranes also cover every movable joint in your body. It's called the synovial membrane in our movable joints, and it's designed to lubricate, and kind of our skin also helps to keep us moist inside and helps our body parts move comfortably around each other without friction and without grinding. So the joints of the body are also affected by this model that I'm going to share with you tonight. So joint pain, what happens eventually as Candida grows unchecked, it actually has both a chemical effect on a healthy membrane. Let's say the healthy one was like this. It has a chemical effect, and I'm going to show you in just a few minutes the chemistry of yeast and how that messes with the membrane. But once it moves through and can penetrate through the membrane, then yeast can go systemic in the body and hit any target organ, including the brain. So it's totally fascinating to see how brain fog and how memory loss and how depression and all these broken brain states have to do with the chemistry of yeast. It's going to be so exciting. So let's get to it. How does it happen? There are 7 risk factors we're going to talk about just quickly. And you can kind of take note in your mind, yep, oh yeah, I've had that, or yep, that's been a part of this loved one's history. The first one is compromised immunity. This can happen by exposure to toxic chemicals, or it can happen by a major stress event, a car accident, whether there's broken bones or not. It's emotional trauma, also compromises our immunity. Using antibiotics, we know what that does is it not only destroys the primary infection we're going after, but it clears all the membranes of their protective, of sort of the brute squad, the police that keep things healthy and happy. So not only is this taking antibiotics for medical reasons, but also antibiotic and commercial dairy products, antibiotics in meat, continue to have an action in our bodies when we consume them, which is totally fascinating. I thought, once it's in an animal and the animal dies, it also dies, but it does not. It continues to have a residual effect in our bodies. Diets high in sugar, welcome to America, right? Hormones, this is either via the monthly menstrual cycle for women, or if you're on a synthetic hormone, that also is like kerosene on a fire for yeast. Yeast love those hormones. So now, why then, if hormones are going to feed this overgrowth of yeast, why would women have more IBS issues than men? Or why would women have more autoimmune disease than men? Well, they're subjecting their bodies go through this every single month. Repeated pregnancies. It's interesting in the health history of someone with leaky gut. Like for me, with each baby, I would pick up a few more symptoms. Until finally, after baby number 4, I'm just flat out in bed, and baby just doesn't sleep enough for how much mommy needs to sleep. All right, stress raises the acidity in your gut, which lowers your pH. So if you're constantly running on adrenaline all day long, and your body doesn't have time to just unwind, to meditate, to completely relax, then in effect, what you're doing is you are killing your friendly bacteria without even taking an antibiotic. Did you know? So let's just imagine that you're paying $30 to $40 for a super high quality probiotic. It's excellent, it's got top ratings, but you're also filling your bowels with fear or regret or resentment or just anxiety about the present, then it will not implant. Even a pH change in your bowel of 0.2 on the pH scale will fry the friendly bacteria. So you're better off taking your money and just shredding it up, sewing it back together, and flushing it down the toilet. So it's so important that we become mindful of how we're living life, learn how to flow with life a little bit better, learn our relationships, how to flow with them and walk peaceably with everyone a little better. It's a gradual process, but it's so key to having a very healthy gut. Alcoholism in the family tree, if that's the case for you, then all of the offspring will have yeast problems. We'll talk in just a minute about the chemistry of alcohol and yeast because they're connected. Why that's the case, the children are affected. Down to 3 and 4 generations, you can see that. The last one is use of steroid and non-steroidal anti-inflammatory drugs. I called our local pharmacy because I wanted to make sure this wasn't just folklore. That steroids were created, they were the wonder drug of the 80s, I believe. And when we found out about all the side effects of steroids, that it had these detrimental effects in the body, then pharmaceutical companies got working on non-steroidal anti-inflammatory drugs. That sounds like a big long word, NSAIDs, but you might recognize the word ibuprofen, Relafin, Naproxen, Mobic, Cellular. These are all non-steroidal anti-inflammatory drugs. And so this pharmacist that I called, he confirmed for me that those are never intended for long-term use, that they do erode the semi-permeable membranes. So what we do is we hurt, so we take ibuprofen, and ibuprofen then erodes the membrane more. So we take more ibuprofen and we upscale it, and it's actually caught us in a vicious cycle of needing to have more of the anti-inflammatory medications. So getting off those, we're going to learn tonight about a way to get off of those and still feel fabulous. All right. I'd like to run through the symptoms of systemic yeast infection. It's really interesting, when I bring up the topic of candida yeast, most men like turn and walk out the door like, that's a girl problem, that doesn't happen to guys. Well, actually, anyone who owns a mucous membrane, this can happen to. So I want you just to turn to the person next to you, just gently shake them on the shoulder and say, your mucous membranes are so important. Let them know. Especially these men. Give them a little nudge. Your mucous membranes are so important. Okay, the first symptoms almost always, not always, but almost always there are abdominal complaints. Sensitivities, you might have diarrhea, moving to constipation or back and forth. Maybe you just have cramping that moves. If you have pain that moves around in the gut, this is, the bowel now begins to be affected and it no longer makes one coordinated contraction from the top to the bottom. Instead, we have the bowel contracting backwards on itself and forwards. And this is what spastic colon is. The muscles become spastic. It's forgotten how to do one coordinated contraction, right? So, and this begins to happen once yeast interferes mechanically with the muscle. There are several layers in the bowel, and once we lose integrity on the very inner layer, that most permeable layer right there, right beneath that layer is now nerve supply and muscle. So as yeast gets a leg up on us, it turns to a mycelial form. This is a form that has little taproots, and this is what yeast does in the middle of the forest floor. It's very effective at decomposing animal matter. And so what it begins to do is decompose your body before you're really done with it. And that's a lot like the way it feels. It's sort of like having a destroying angel inside you running around and doing all that. Fascinating little note I'll just mention for anyone who's interested in Holy Writ, the Feast of the Passover is a Candida program. And the children of Israel observed that once a year before anything sweet was found on the earth. And the promise to them for honoring that tradition was that the destroying angel would pass them by. What if all of that stuff is not just figurative we observe those things just figuratively. But what if there are literally deeper truths in Holy Writ about the health of our bodies? Kind of fascinating to wrap your mind around. Okay, so we have the abdominal complaints. For me, I had this nausea, bloating, difficulty swallowing. If you know someone who has difficulty getting food down into the stomach, perhaps the esophagus is collapsing, or they have sphincters that aren't releasing and opening. Diverticulitis, where the muscle loses its tone and now is pinching down, that can be reversed. We can actually innervate bowel that didn't have nerve supply. It's amazing to me how beautifully the body responds once it's given the proper support. It's just miraculous, in fact. Okay, so for me, I was tested for parasites several times, gallbladder dysfunction. I did fat intolerance tests, ulcers, lesions. I had probes, scopes, everything, appendicitis. It was all negative. Food sensitivities are, if you feel bad after eating certain foods, you have a leaky gut. I can guarantee you have a leaky gut, and there's something you can do about it. That would include acid reflux, stomach pain, gas, dizziness, headache, stuffy nose. Some foods just make your head stuff up really quick. Asthma, skin dryness, or rashes of all kinds. All right, hormones. This next one is called the triple crown of autoimmunity. If you tell me you have hypoglycemia, I also know that pretty quick or even right away, you've got low thyroid issues. You may not have been diagnosed yet, but you start to have cold hands and feet. Your basal body temperature is a little bit lower than it needs to be, and you might not do your best thinking first thing when you wake up. You gotta get up and move around and elevate your basal body temperature, and then your brain can, the synapses are firing, and you can, have a consistent thought where, the neurons are, dendrites are touching, and, oh, I had a thought. Anyway, this was the case for me. Until when we had our third baby, it took us 3 years to get the fourth baby, and so I started learning about just natural, infertility measures, and found out, holy smokes, my basal body temperature is almost 3 degrees low. 98.6 is normal. I was at 95.6. And so no wonder I was having difficulty conceiving. However, I had my thyroid checked, and my doctor said, your thyroid's just fine. I thought, well, did you talk to it? Because it's not acting fine. I have all the symptoms of low thyroid. And what I believe was happening at that point is my thyroid was still cranking out the proper levels of thyroid hormone, but the receptor sites were covered. So these important enzyme hormones were not hitting the mark. They were just not being uptaken in the proper place. Once I corrected the problem, all the cold hands and feet, the thyroid issues went away, and we had 5 more babies. It was sort of like, look at me across the room to my guy, and we were on our way to the next one. So that was really exciting. Okay. I just want you to turn to your neighbor for a second. Just give him a fist bump. Ask him, do you sleep in your socks? Just ask him, do you sleep in your socks? Are your feet cold? Fist bump. If you both are sock sleepers, sock sleepers unite. It's very common, and it's something we can do something about. Okay, let's move to the rest of what we have on this screen. Craving sweets is almost always a symptom. I would question the diagnosis if you didn't have a craving for bread or for sugary foods. And it's not a personality disorder for you. It's that you have an organism in large numbers that is demanding to be fed. That's all it is. So if you have a hard time walking past a plate of warm chocolate chip cookies, just know it's not you, it's the yeast. Okay? So you won't always be that way. Once you clear them out, then you can walk right by. Or, maybe you'll have one or half of one once you're well. Okay. So I skipped over allergies. I talked about becoming more sensitive. Even bed sheets have different minerals in them. People can become allergic to the bed sheets if you're having a lot of problem with rashes. All sorts of things can now begin to trigger because it's moving through the skin and it shouldn't be. Pollen is actually moving right through the membranes that are designed to keep pollen out. All right. So yeast infections of the skin. This is the one area that's more obvious. For men, they'll kind of embrace the idea that they've had athlete's foot, jock itch, eczema, then they're...
My projector is just so that you're standing in front of it quite frequently.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Stand over this way. Then.
Okay, can you still see if I'm right here? Yeah, just give me the motion, get over, lady. Okay. Okay, and then I mentioned reproductive problems. That's all permeable mucous membrane. It's so fun to see how fertility returns. Muscles, bones, and joints. So we talked about fatigue, pain, numbness. Neuropathy is also a function. We won't go into that. If you have neuropathy, come and talk to me after, and I'll explain to you how that's connected. Okay, symptoms of systemic yeast. This is a few more here. Respiratory, if you have asthma. For me, when I went out running, I'm a runner, I've been running since 7th grade, and when I go out running all through high school, I would just feel this like there was a band across my chest, only when I ran. I didn't know I had asthma, but that's called asthma on exertion, and I would just have to stop on a street corner and just so I knew, yeah, I can still feel my lungs, but I just can't do it while I'm running. So, and that also slipped away. Okay. Chemical sensitivity. If you just cannot have the windows down at a gas station, if standing in a paint store gives you a roaring headache, being around cigarette smoke, even if laundry day is rough on you, then this chemical sensitivity is another sign of leaky gut or systemic yeast. All right, let's look at the neurological symptoms. Headaches, dizziness, forgetfulness. This is the part that was the most concerning to me after I had that 4th baby. I just had these strange adrenaline surges that I remember just walking out to the parking lot with a grocery cart once, and this adrenaline surge just came. There was no logical reason for it. It just welled up inside me, and I just did this little Lucky Charms leprechaun thing, but my boot slipped out from under me, and I ended up on the parking lot. Anyway, also another time when I was pregnant with that 4th baby, I was walking back to my office after lunch, and I fell off the sidewalk. It wasn't a high sidewalk. It was just, it was a sidewalk, but so my equilibrium was just off, and I ended up on the grass, and people are like, "Hey, lady, are you okay?" I'm like, yeah, I just ate a really, sugary lunch right there, I guess. I didn't see the connection at the time, but I also had 4 petit mal seizures in elementary school, and what we knew about those, what my mom learned is that was connected to blood sugar. If I went to school without breakfast, and the first one happened when I went to school without breakfast one morning. Or if I ate sugar on an empty stomach, then that also would trigger this. Later, I learned about the ketogenic diet for pediatric epilepsy from Johns Hopkins Children's Hospital. And this was amazing. I ordered the documentary video of it right away because there they said we can get kids off of anti-seizure meds if they do this diet. And this protocol was a very strict Candida diet. They said, we don't know why this works, we just know that it does. And P.S., don't try this at home. Don't try cutting out sugar, and don't try going off of breads.
You might die.
Yeah, you might. But anyway, so I was so thrilled to know that too was connected. I didn't have to fear that I was going to become an epileptic and that would come back to haunt me. And so now for, goodness, 35 years, not a problem. Haven't had any return of that. So that too, these are neurological symptoms now. They're connected with a leaky gut. I also have the honor and privilege of working with people who do have seizures and see their progress and their improvement. It's so exciting. All right, let's move on. Okay, ask any medical provider, a registered nurse, an MD, an ND, a DO, and they will agree with you that 8% of your immunity occurs in the gut. Of course, the way you treat it, and of course, the state of that gut is going to affect your overall health. Okay, I want to just take a minute here and talk about, we're not going to be talking about cancer tonight, but I just want to point out one thing, because this is the chemistry that I referred to that affects your brain. The link is really strong in flooding the medical literature now about leaky gut and cancer. There's one story, though, that will help you understand how broken brains are connected. May I share that story? Okay, the year is 1931, and the man's name is Otto Warburg. He's a German biochemist, and he's just been awarded the Nobel Prize for Medicine for his discovery, and his discovery was this, that degenerative disease thrives in an acid body. And he was working with tuberculosis patients, which was really a great concern for all of the Western world at that time. And he was reversing tuberculosis for people by putting them on a very strict alkaline diet, and he found that he could actually reverse the symptoms and do what's required for medicine is that you have double blind. He was able to duplicate the results and then reproduce the results, and then take the results away again with this alkalizing diet. So he's kind of the father of the raw food movement and the alkaline movement. We didn't call it that then, but it's been in the medical literature since 1931. Nobel Prize for Medicine. That's pretty mainstream, right? Well, now, fast forward with me to the year 1965, and Otto Warburg is presenting a paper to the Nobel laureate. Now, this group of people who are awarded the Nobel Prize for Medicine, they gather up and share their research in the future years. So he's now in Lindau, Germany, presenting this paper called The Prime Cause and Prevention of Cancer. And in this document, he states that cancer is caused when regular cell respiration gets replaced by fermentation of sugars. That sounds like a big jump right there. Like, what does respiration and sugars have to do with each other? But think with me that one thing that all living things need to do, there's one process that we all share, from the tiniest animals to highly developed animals like us, and that is we all got to breathe. Our cells have to breathe. But not only do we breathe, if we didn't have adequate respiration going on, we wouldn't be able to digest any of our food. So it's how we unlock energy from our food. So I'd like all of you just to take a little look. Actually, let me warn you. If you, during high school biology, you got kind of a little bit lightheaded or hyperventilated when you saw a chemistry formula, I'd like you just to put your head down for a minute. Just close your eyes. Okay, everyone else who's feeling brave, just take a quick look. This diagram is a diagram that illustrates cell respiration in a healthy, oxygenated environment. So this is an aerobic environment. I'd like you just to divide the screen right down the middle, right down through glucose right here. On the left-hand side, this is a body that oxygenates well, okay? So at the top of it, we're going to pretend we have one molecule of glucose, and it's from a really healthy, non-GMO apple, okay? So we have one molecule of apple, and that goes into this body that's a really healthy body, and it starts unlocking energy. At the very top, 2 ATP over here on the right. So we get to have 2 energy units. Don't worry about that word. It's adenosine triphosphate, but it's all in the past. We won't need to retrieve that. So you got 2 energy units, and now on the left side of the pyramid, you get 34 more units of energy. Wow. So that's how many units of energy from one single molecule? We have 36 crazy cool energy units, right? Now let's take a look at a body that has an agent of fermentation. Now, what ferments sugar? Can you think for a minute? What organism ferments sugar? Someone high-five that person. Who said that? Give her a high five. Fist bump. That's awesome. Yeah. So take just a minute with me and let's consider, how do you make beer? How do you make wine? How do you make alcohol? Well, you got to have some kind of yeast. With beer, we have a brewer's yeast that goes into the barrel. Then we have the filtered water, and we need some kind of a sugar supply. So for beer, now I'm from Bend, and they're known for craft brewing up there. And what we know is that we can put barley malt into the beer. And that will feed the brewer's yeast, which will then give us what magical substance? Why do people pay money for that stuff? The alcohol, right? The higher the sugar content, the higher the alcohol content that results, right? Now let's take the case of wine. With wine, we have this beautiful grape juice. It gets all smashed up, and on the skin of the grapes, there's kind of a whitish film, right? That is a natural yeast that ferments the wine. So we have our fermentation factor. We have the beautiful grape juice, and we put that in, same thing, like in a barrel. We cork it up, and we deny it of oxygen, and the more we do that, it just, in this anaerobic environment, that yeast will digest that sugar, and it's going to pump out all sorts of alcohol for us. It's a beautiful thing. Now, that's very similar. Inside the corked wine barrel is very similar to the dark, moist gut down inside of you. There's not tons of air in there, but it's just enough that yeast can thrive in that environment and crank out alcohol all day long. As long as you feed it sugar, it's going to go ahead and elevate alcohol levels in your blood. So, all right, now, if your eyes were closed, I want to invite you to open your eyes now. So we have a much tamer diagram here up in front. So we see yeast-free body. The byproducts of digesting food on the yeast-free body are just a little bit of moisture that comes out when we exhale, and a little bit of CO2 when we exhale. On the other side, we have only 2 energy units. Oh my goodness, this is why you have no energy and strength, because you're not getting the energy you deserve from the food you're eating. Remember, it was a non-GMO apple. It was beautiful. It was organic. but I still don't get the energy from it because I've got a fermentation factory going on inside my body. So what I get with this one is 2 energy units is all, everything else becomes alcohol and CO2. And this is that burping and bloating that you feel after you eat food. Whatever food you eat, any simple sugars are going to convert into that alcohol and CO2 and just make you feel more and more bloated. Okay, pretty cool stuff, right? Who knew that high school biology could really have so much to do with your health later on? So, all right. All right, we're going to get on to what we came here for in just a minute, the 5-step protocol that you came to hear. But I want you just to consider with me the chemistry of yeast. There are 3 magical things that yeast gives us when we feed it sugar. The first one is oxalate. Oxalate is the same thing as oxalic acid. And if you've ever had a kidney stone, or if someone you love has had a kidney stone, you know it's an experience you never, ever want to have again. So painful, and you don't even get a beautiful bouncing baby after. But it's similar to that kind of experience, I understand. So elevated oxalates, these are responsible for kidney stones. We also know, too, that children with ADD and autism have elevated oxalate in their bloodstream and affecting their brain. The second thing is acetaldehyde. Just the sound of that doesn't sound like something I'd want to pour into my brain, but sure enough, it gets there. It jumps through the brain, the blood-brain barrier, and acetaldehyde is responsible for destroying dopamine. Now, raise your hand if you've heard of dopamine or you know what it's for. This is the happy hormone. Good, there are a few of us. Dopamine has this tremendous responsibility of regulating your mood, of motivating you to set goals, motivating you to get out of bed. Here are a few other things dopamine does. It regulates your sleep cycle, your cognitive thinking. It helps decision-making and creativity. When it's interfered with, brain states of impairment such as Parkinson's, Alzheimer's, schizophrenia, and ADHD are the results. So in addition to destroying your dopamine, acetaldehyde from yeast destroys the enzymes needed for cell energy and prevents blood from carrying oxygen. So one really interesting symptom that people have when they get leaky gut for a long time is they become a little bit anemic. They look a little bit pale, and this is because of the effect of acetaldehyde on their ability to bind with iron. So the iron is necessary in order to hang on to the oxygen molecule and carry it to all the different cells. So this is part of how we kind of slowly suffocate and become a fermentation factory. The oxygen can't be carried where it needs to go. The tissues, these tertiary tissues are now, instead of being rich with oxygen, they're depleted of oxygen and have elevated alcohol going on. So any condition that you know alcohol exacerbates, leaky gut is going to create that for you, even though you never touch a glass to your lips. And that's shocking to people who say, well, I don't drink. But you can actually be creating a little fermentation factory right inside your very own body just by eating sugar when you have an imbalance of yeast. Okay, so these are symptoms of elevated blood alcohol. Let's take a look. Dizziness, weakness and fatigue, foggy thinking, the headaches, the migraine, kind of like a hangover. If you feel sort of like you're hungover or a little bit buzzed in your brain all the time, that's because yeast creates this very same effect. Gas and bloating and burping, nausea, anxiety, irrational fears, quick temper, clumsy, remember I fell off the sidewalk, incoordination, easily overwhelmed, depression, all these things result from the chemistry of yeast. So you might ask yourself now, like, well, how do I know if I've got this? I might have a few symptoms, but how can I really know if I've got this? In your class notes, there is a little test there called the spit test. I recommend the first way is just to review a catalog of symptoms like we just ran through. Take a look at them and just highlight, oh, yep, I've had that in the past, or I've got that right now. But there's another way you can confirm that. I would go first with your symptom list. If you have 0 symptoms, no symptoms at all, then you probably don't have a yeast overgrowth. But if you just want to confirm it, you can do this little spit test. That is to put a glass of water out on the nightstand the night before you get out of bed. You don't want to get out of bed and move around because that will start to warm the body and thin mucus that you might have. So right when you wake up, just work up a nice quab of spit. A really good one. Don't be all sissy about it. Just spit into the glass. And if there's mucus, if there's this heavy mucus in your saliva, then that's an indication you've got yeast messing with your mucous membranes. And this one right here is a mucous membrane. So that's just another way to help a loved one see, you know what, I didn't realize you have this going on. Or for yourself to confirm it. If the saliva just floats all happy, like a little bubble on top for 20 minutes, nothing, the water doesn't get cloudy or have little speckles down in it, then you're probably good to go. Okay, now the moment you've all been waiting for, what do we do about it? So I'm here to share with you tonight a 5-step protocol. And these are 5 simultaneously goals that move forward together, all right? Let me first just say, I meant to show this to you earlier. After I recovered from fibromyalgia, I had so many people on my phone asking me, how did you do it? And can you send me some resources? And so I spent a ton of time with all these little kids wrapped around me now, trying to help other people. And finally, I put it all in a book called the Feel Good Cookbook, Whole Foods and Allergy-Free Recipes. And I feel like the most valuable part of this are the first 30 pages. The introduction is a recipe for recovery from autoimmune disease. There are also some other interesting thoughts to consider as you embark on any journey to heal. And it's really everything I would tell you if we had a weekend together, and a little Q&A, so take a look at it. There's some things here too about the mind-body connection, learning to do life a little more gracefully and with a little less resistance. There are also hundreds of sugar-free, dairy-free, wheat-free recipes. There are also recipes with wheat. This is our working cookbook at home. We use it all the time. So it's really a cookbook for how you can live the rest of your life using all these beautiful foods. When you're doing the program that I'm talking about right now, you won't be able to be baking homemade wheat breads, but you'll have that to look forward to when you're done with the program, okay? All right, so number 1, we're going to normalize the bowel. It's the first step. So no matter how plugged up you are, I know we've only met tonight, but can we talk about your bowel? Can we do that? All right, I want you to think for just a minute of what your poo is telling you. I know that's not very graceful, but it's a reality that everyone poops. And if we're not pooping, then there's something we need to do about that. Because that's step number 1. We need to normalize the bowel. And we have here your bowel's best friend. Let me introduce your bowel's best friend. This is a liquid sponge. Right now it's a dry formula, but you add it to juice or water. It's composed of psyllium husk, apple pectin, a bentonite clay, montmorillonite clay, which is very absorbent. In the old days, we would take charcoal to try to absorb things. If we drank poison or something, we'd take charcoal. It's similar to that. And that is really the magic ingredient. Without the montmorillonite clay in there, it just doesn't have this absorbing power. So this is not only a way to help establish regular bowel movements every morning before noon, but it's, let me share a little secret with you. This is a liquid sponge that will reach down your throat and will mop up what you just ate. So if you eat something you think, oh, I wish I hadn't eaten that. That was so sugary, triple chocolate cheesecake or something like that, where you start to feel the sugar coma coming on. You run to your cupboard, you open it, you take three little scoops of this and put it into some juice or water, blend it up really good, put a lid on it and shake it, drink it right down, and within about 10 to 15 minutes you'll feel that stomach flu or that nausea or that headache or that food that you ate that you wish you didn't eat. It will lock it up and take it out the door 6 to 8 hours later. But the lockup happens right away and you feel the relief right away. So the only difficulty using this with a family of children is convincing that child they really are sick still, even though they feel fantastic now. They're not going to go run around outside and it'll just be a quiet day home with mom, but they won't be throwing up all day. So it's fantastic for that. But it's also important step number 1 with this protocol. We normalize the bowel. We do whatever it takes. There are many ways you can increase the output of garbage. You'll be amazed at how much clearer you think and how much more energy returns to you just merely by establishing that 1 step. Normalize the bowel. And there are instructions for how to do all this, so you don't need to write all this down. That's Exodus, it's step number 1. Okay, the next step is we're going to remove pathogens. This is a combination of 5 very bitter herbs. They are antifungal, they are antiviral. Mediterranean oregano actually has antiviral properties, so it's effective for cold sores or shingles in the first 24 hours. I found it not to be super effective if that zoster virus has already taken over your body. Similar to medications for virus, they just aren't that effective if you've gone more than 24 hours with it. There are other things that we can do to help mitigate symptoms, but so this is a collection of 5 herbs. We have myrrh gum, chaparral, pau d'arco, oregano, and olive leaf together. And I had been using 3 of these in combination for a number of years that were moderately effective, but Nothing like this. This has been called diflucan on steroids. It's very powerful. So it's so important to use it with wisdom and to follow the instructions. You step into these very slowly. 1 capsule after you've done the first day here, normalizing the bowel. Then you move in very slowly. 1 capsule in the morning. If you feel great, you can take another capsule that night. If you feel headachy or bloaty, you run for the exodus, and that will sponge up the bloating. It will sponge up diop as you move through this program. So it's brilliant for a number of reasons. All of them work together. All right, the next step is, this is what caused the gut to leak, right? So now our next project is we want to heal up the bowel. We want to restore the proper permeability. Glutamine hit the health spotlight about 10 years ago. And it was used first by distance runners and weightlifters. And they found that if they uploaded glutamine prior to a race or a workout, they could really reduce their muscle recovery time. I heard on the radio one day, back about 8 years ago, that athletes who use glutamine had fewer colds and flus than athletes who did not use glutamine. And right there, I pulled over. I thought, glutamine has to have an effect on the gut then. If it's helping raise their immunity, it's got to be doing something for the gut. So I started researching and found, glutamine. I found one study where doctors were using glutamine only to treat peptic ulcers, and we're having remarkable success in the 80%. We consider a medication to be effective if it has a 20% success rate. So 80% for peptic ulcers. All they were doing was taking 3 teaspoons of glutamine a day to help with these peptic ulcers. And I thought, that's what leaky gut is. We need glutamine in there. It's fantastic. And I've witnessed myself that this cuts the recovery time in about half. Now your body will eventually get the glutamine that it needs. Glutamine is considered a conditionally essential amino acid. So essential amino acids, we have to bring them in through the food we eat. We have amino acids that our body can compose on its own and synthesize them. This is conditionally essential based on if you have an infection or an illness. So in the case of leaky gut, you have both an infection and an illness, and you do need more brought in. So you'll be taking a teaspoon of this each night with your evening dose. Okay, the next thing, step number 4, is we got to restore the friendly bacteria. We want a really robust, healthy population to cover not just the bowel, but every mucous membrane of the body. And this is a combination, 10 billion colonies a day. It also has a food that target feeds your friendly bacteria. If you have a probiotic at home that you love, that's great. This one is wonderful because it doesn't have to be refrigerated, so it works well for what I'm doing. So I can send it out to the world, and it's freeze-dried, and people are getting remarkable results with that too. You need a really good probiotic. All right, and number 5 is proper nutritional support. People will get results on this program without altering their diet. They will feel a difference. However, while you're committing to your body to take a little better care, to wake up from perhaps that crash and burn that I experienced years ago, then why not take this opportunity for these 30 days to feed your body nutritious food? My greatest recommendation is that you focus on animal protein, clean animal protein, and lots of fresh vegetables. You're also permitted 1 serving of fruit a day on this program. And I recommend that you go for low sugar fruits like Granny Smith apples or a bowl of berries with coconut cream on top. Fabulous ways to treat your body. Also begin treating your body emotionally. Treat your body with a warm, cheery fire or some fresh flowers, something you wouldn't do. Maybe scrapbooking, something you've denied yourself, but you love it so much. So begin, or a bubble bath. You're going to begin treating your body in other ways besides sugar on the tongue. Okay, so that was the speed run through everything. I want to just share a couple of testimonials with you. There are so many. There are 150 testimonials on my website. If you'd like to go there, there's a little search field, and you can type in your favorite pet symptom and read letters from people who have that exact same thing and see how quickly did their body respond, what else they notice about it during their recovery. This woman actually became a distributor for me in Arizona. She had such a remarkable experience with it, and her primary concern was with joint pain. I know this is a lot to read here. Let's just look at, she found that for 4 years she couldn't bend her wrist, she couldn't push up to get herself out of bed. She had to sort of roll out of bed because of this situation in her wrist. Had an MRI, found cysts there, asked the doctor what are the cysts, and he's like, I don't know what caused them, but there they are, cysts, sure enough. Well, she suspected this had to do with, she knew a little bit about yeast, she had read my book before, and she said, I'm just going to go for it. So she did this program that I'm telling you about tonight, and said within 30 days that all that joint pain was gone. And we had Teresa talk a little bit about that too. It's simple, isn't it? If that joint's lined with a mucous membrane that's inflamed, if we can cool off that inflammation and that membrane's happy again, of course, we can unplug pain. So, all right, next one. This gentleman, I want to put one in because there's some men in the room. This gentleman had been medicating acid reflux and heartburn for 20 years. He also, this is interesting, he said his vocal range, his vocal cords started kind of shutting down. He was a singer, but he found that he just wasn't able to hit the highs or get down to the lows anymore. His voice was starting to get a little bit scratchy. That is mucous membrane, right? In the upper respiratory tract. He did the program, he lost a total of 20 pounds. And what was cool is when he went back on the high carb foods after finishing his reboot, he didn't gain the weight back. So he went back to grains and rice and wheat bread and didn't put the weight back on. So that's the clearest testament to me. It's not just the way you're eating, but it's having a comprehensive program that works together. While you're being good on a diet, definitely get a reboot in there and get the most for all of your effort. Because you can knit that up tight and keep that progress you've made by eating well. Let's just look at one more and then we'll open for questions. Oh, this cute lady. She said, all I want is to be able to one day say, I haven't felt this great in years. And she did. She found the reboot, her doctor pointed her to it, and it's just remarkable to me the kinds of results that people are getting when they restore health to the navel and then have that bone marrow behave itself again and see this strength, fertility if that's a concern for you, and this love for life, embrace this love for life again. Will you join me in a doable cause to heal the world one leaky gut at a time? I think we can do it. Give me a fist in the air if you'll tell one person about this. Give me two if you'll tell two people. Can you tell two people? There's something you can do. Thank you very much for your attention. Well, now, we now have about 10 minutes to answer questions. I'm sure that you have some.
When you're pregnant, are you allowed to, is this something you can do while you're
Great
pregnant?
question. Excellent question. Cleansing for yeast is not recommended during pregnancy because everything that you take into your body will get into your blood and will hit the baby. So it's going to get in the baby's blood too. Everything with the exception of the Exodus. This is an enteric formula, and women have loved this for pregnancy. I used it during pregnancy too. It soaks up morning sickness, it keeps the bowel moving, especially during that third trimester when there's not enough room in there for everybody. It's fantastic. So this one is, but the bitter herbs are blood cleansing herbs. So I recommend no, but there is a way that women can do it if they are suffering with systemic yeast symptoms during pregnancy. There is a way they can approach that that's going to be very gentle for baby. You kind of wonder, a lot of moms wonder, well, if I'm so loaded with yeast, do I want my baby getting that coming through the birth canal? You know, is that baby going to be teeming with yeast too? So it's a great question. I do have a blog on my site that addresses that, how women could approach that if they're pregnant and they really are so uncomfortable. If they're considering a medication, just let's get the yeast going with a little bit of reboot, but they approach it very gently. Any other questions?
Are you involved with the quality of the glutamine? Because there are glutamines and then there are really, they're not what they say they are.
This is just a pure pharmaceutical grade. If you have something like that at home, definitely use that. This glutamine that I have comes from corn cobs and birch bark. So it's from foods that we don't normally eat birch bark, do we? But from corn. But if you have any good pharmaceutical grade glutamine, then that would be great. Use that. That's the important thing, is that it's this amino acid. That's all that's found in this. It's just L-glutamine, which means free form. It's isolated to be only glutamine, nothing else tied in with it. So there's no corn sugar or corn protein in it. A lot of people wonder, well, how long is this going to take me? How long do I have to do this? Is that a question that maybe some of you, I see some nods. The length of your reboot will depend entirely on your body, but you can kind of take a formula that I learned way back when. The old medical formula is if you are on a yeast program with medications for yeast, you can count on 1 month of therapy for every year that you've had systemic yeast. So in my mind, I'm like, yep, 24 months. I'd had symptoms for 24 years at the point I learned about this. On this program, you can count on about a week, 1 to 2 weeks for every year that you've had systemic yeast symptoms or leaky gut symptoms. So it's very fast. I think part of that is that it's comprehensive. So I actually did an antifungal medication for the first month, But I think what really helps, my doctor never asked me about my bowel habits. I was going once a week. I was having a bowel movement. And no one ever talked to me about that. That wasn't healthy, and I wouldn't get very far with medications for yeast if it has nowhere to go. So it's so important that you have a comprehensive program, that you're addressing the bowel first, and then you're taking out the garbage as quickly as you're killing off yeast. If that's the case, so I'm going to just mention to you, I'm sorry I skipped over it. How much do you need to be pooping every day on this program? You need to be getting about 12 to 14 inches to 16 inches of garden hose in the toilet throughout a 24-hour period. Doesn't matter how often. If it's one big comprehensive dump, that's great. If it's 3 times throughout the day, all you want to do is get that kind of volume out. Now eventually you'll notice as you move through the reboot, your body's ability to void the bowel will return. And you'll have these nice loamy bowel movements. They're formed in the toilet, and when you flush, they break up. So they don't sink to the bottom like a rock, but they do have shape. And you just feel better. They come out without having to hang out in there for 45 minutes. So all that will return. Don't sweat it, having perfect poops yet. You just want to get that much volume out, and then you'll notice that your bowel does remember how to do its job properly once we restore health in the neighborhood. Okay, I'm sorry. Did your question? Your hand was up first. Would you like to ask your question?
Well, we were curious, does bone broth contain
Glutamine. It probably does.
Okay.
Bone broth is a wonderful nutrient. It's fabulous, and I've had it on my stove at home. I want to make it really clear because there's a lot going on in social media about bone broth, a lot going on online about bone broth. It is fabulous nutrition for your body. However, it is not one of the 5 pillars of restoring leaky gut. So I know that Dr. Josh Axe talks about that, and people are spending a tremendous amount of money. Their family doesn't like the smell of the bones boiling, so they've got a dehydrated form they can just whip up easily. But it is not one of the pillars of restoring health. I taught a class in August down in Utah and met a woman who'd been doing Josh Axe bone broth collagen for 6 months. She'd also been doing coconut water kefir because she couldn't tolerate any kind of dairy products. And after 6 months, she still said, I'm having 20 bowel movements a day, and I have a difficult time leaving the house. Now there was a bathroom 20 feet from the lecture hall that we were in. I'm so glad she came there because she left that night and took the program with her, and she emailed me on the 11th day, and she said, ever since the first night that I took the Exodus, I've had 1 to 2 bowel movements a day. I can't believe it. It's been 4 years. I've had these problems. And just remarkable results. So I'm just emphasizing that. There are so many good things you can do to help your body. It can be really overwhelming. And you wonder, well, which ones do I need to do? Which ones are really essential? So bone broth, save that for later. If that's stressing out your family or that's stressing you out and you don't find great pleasure, then just know that's not a part of this Speed Heal the Bowel program. But definitely bring it in because it's good nutrition when you want it.
I just
Okay?
use it to cook with, so.
Oh, it's great. Yeah, I had a pumpkin soup tonight that had bone broth, chicken bones, organic chicken bones in it. It's awesome.
And then another one on Raynaud's disease, where your fingertips are cold all the time. My husband's fingertips turn white, and I can't remember exactly what we were talking about, but I wrote it down. You said that the yeast would cause the fingertips to go cold?
It just goes counter to proper circulation. That's one thing, but when it affects the thyroid, then the whole core temperature of the body is lower. So if he's been diagnosed with Raynaud's, he probably knows all about his thyroid. There's thyroid dysfunction there.
From his father. His
Oh.
father's been diagnosed, but his fingers go white
Okay.
as well. So.
Okay.
And Raynaud's is an autoimmune condition.
Yeah, he'd
so
definitely benefit from it.
Fits right into the whole leaky gut, definitely. Yeah.
Do we have time? Let's do one more question. Anyone else have another question? Yes.
How long do you do this? Like, do you do it for 30 days and then take a break, or do you do it until you feel really well? And then
That's such a great question. Okay, you start with a 30-day reboot. And just keep track of how many of your symptoms are gone. And they'll move, they'll budge. Within 7 days, you're going to feel a difference. Now, most people, within 24 hours to 48 hours, they feel so great. Part of that is just because they're pooping for the first time in a long time. They're paying attention to what their body's doing. But after that 30 days, what you'll do is you'll pursue the reboot until all of your symptoms are gone. So at the 30-day mark, you'll take a break, give your body a weekend off, give your cleansing organs. If at any time you feel tenderness in your liver or your kidneys, back off of the body balance capsules and keep pooping. And you'll find within about 24 hours that will lift. And when you come back into it, go more slowly. You've got to increase the output of garbage in order to prevent overloading your cleansing organs. They all work together. You're not damaging your kidneys, you're not damaging your liver. In fact, if you don't do it, eventually you will have problems in those areas. But you want to this is your gas pedal right here. So if you start feeling really headachy or like, oh man, this is not going to be for a loop. If you've had a history with alcohol, you'll want to approach it slowly because there's a bunch of that going on in your liver. So you want to step in gradually. The instructions tell you how to do that. How to back off if you feel yucky, skip the next dose. If you're feeling great the next morning, then you can come back to it. Or you can come at it more slowly. You will get there. You just want to use wisdom with these herbs and step in gradually up to 6 capsules a day. And that's a moderate cleanse. Now for an acute condition like your body's covered with hives, you can take up to 15 of these a day to knock that out. I have a special protocol for hives that's mostly a GI cleanse because whatever's triggering the hives is somehow in the bowel. So I recommend 5 doses, just like you do on day 1 of reboot. Come back to that, grab everything that's triggering it and flush that out, and then you can come back in with the bitter herbs to calm down the hives. So for short-term acute conditions, you can take up to 15 of them a day, as long as you're pooping. You can't take any of them if you're not there. I'll be angry with you, but your body will also let you know. You'll feel a little more dizzy and a little more yucky every day if you're not pooping and you're still taking any antifungal agent. Okay? Yes, sir.
I was wondering, does this program have any effect on high cholesterol?
That's really interesting. I have a little theory about that. I'm working with my mom right now who has elevated cholesterol. She's been on the program for about 15 days. And you think, well, why hasn't your mom done this a million years before now? There's a right time for everybody, I guess. She's having excellent stuff happening with her diabetes. Her blood sugars are in the 80s now instead of 110. She's also the neuropathy on the bottom of her feet. It's connected with diabetes. That also has lifted, which is really exciting. So I would say for high cholesterol, if you're looking at the LDLs, they get a little bit whacked out. I do know that for me, during pregnancy, my cholesterol did weird things. And as soon as the baby was born, it went back. That's partly connected with, for the female, pregnancy cycle. I was told by my gynecologist that your cholesterol's always whacked out when you're pregnant. I'm like, I didn't know that. I never have had my cholesterol checked because I was young having all these babies. But I don't, in fact, have the information that will. I'm saying find some other symptoms that we know are connected and then watch and be surprised and delighted when it helps with the cholesterol as well. You know that the clogging has to do with certain lignans in your blood, and for sure clearing yeast out of the equation would be beneficial to it. I'd be happy to walk with you if you want to give that a go and see what it does for your cholesterol. So I can let you know in a few weeks when Mom has her cholesterol checked again, how that impacted her.
I found with myself, there's nothing I can do as far as diet goes. The only thing that worked is statin. I don't want to take statin.
Yeah, she's been on statin too. Oh, okay.
Somebody mentioned niacin, but I don't know. They claim you can lower it
If
without.
that can help it. I know there are lots of natural things. Talk to this wonderful doctor here. She probably has ideas for you. If I can get your name and your email, I'm happy to follow up with you about what happens for Mom with her cholesterol. And if you're interested in that particular symptom, then let's just network about it. Is that okay?
I couldn't hear you.
Give me your email before you leave, and I'll let you know what happens for her cholesterol.
I put it on
I'll keep you in connect
Okay,
on
good.
it, yeah.
All right. Thank you so much for your time this evening. You're welcome to, we have 16 kits here tonight if anyone's feeling like, yep, it's time. These
Actually,
products.
we only have 14.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Oh, I'm
They
sorry,
keep
I lied.
trying to get you out the door.
Okay, I just want to give you my guarantee that if you do this program and you don't have results that make you just want to shout it from the rooftops, then you are entitled to a refund. I would love to invite you to give it a go and find it for yourself that health really does begin in the navel. Okay?
I have a quick question.
Yeah.
How many of you guys, if we got Janelle to come back and do another road trip, would bring friends and come back? Okay,
Great.
great.
Well, that's why we had you here, because the response has been really amazing. And I don't know if you know what a gem we have here tonight. You have such knowledge. No, thank you. She has great knowledge and because I'm here to support you, and Janelle is amazing.
I'm here to
at
support you too.
So
Let's walk together.
we'll, wow, one leaky gut at a time.
That's right.
All right, thank you. Any
That's right.
questions? Come on up.